For the first time in recent memory, my thumbnail isn't clickbait, and I'm sorry, but there's no easy way to say it. I'm so disappointed with this printer. It is quite simply not the one for me, and you'll soon see throughout this video there are numerous frustrations I've had in the basic journey of just testing that it works. But this is me. I have a very specific use case with my printers that I show in every video. I print miniatures, busts, and occasionally small dioramas. And it's important to understand that because in your case it may actually be the perfect printer for you, depending on what you print and specifically how fast you want to print it. And I have to say that despite my views here, I do have a fondness for Creality. I really do. I've had a great time with their Ender 5 S1, and the first printer I ever saw in real life was the original CR10. But this printer has taught me a lot of new things to watch out for when choosing a resin printer. And knowing these things you may have never considered before, that will probably help you too. So hi, I'm Ross, and this is Fohammer Videos. People have asked me for a while to include Creality on our top 10 list of printers for miniatures. This is on fohammer.com. The Halot 1 and Halot 1 Plus were cited as great examples of solid, robust and no-nonsense 3D printers. But I couldn't include them on that list because we never had them and never tested them. So colour me excited when Creality actually reached out to me and offered to work with us and the website. I initially wanted coverage of their Ender 5 S1. I'm not typically an FDM printer, I hate layer lines, but I was super pleased with that unit out of the box. When I learned of the Halot Mage Pro, I went begging my contact to send me one before release. I even said I'm happy to pay for it, but since resin printing is what I do, the spec of this really excites me. And spec-wise, it's got a 10.3 inch LCD with 8K resolution. What that actually means is 29.7 micron pixels. That's the metric you should be comparing between printers rather than just 2K, 4K or 8K, because screen resolution is only useful when comparing to printers with the same screen size. Build volume is 228 by 128 by 230, which is fairly average nowadays for mid-range build area, but a tad short in build height, though this isn't a problem for me because I mostly print miniatures. It's got a flip-top lid with a nice strong hinge, and that flips to a full 180 degrees, and it also leaves you decent access within the machine. Added extras include a really smart air purifier, which is an integrated unit and includes a carbon filter. This also has an extendable hose that you can feed outside and vent your volatile organic compounds. This is really great, though I had a different kind of fun with it. And it comes with a resin pump, which is really great for a large printer. You could be printing larger things and could run out of resin mid-print. This is designed so that a hose can be fed into an open bottle of resin, and that resin can be replenished when the vat gets low. It's also got dual linear rails and an incredibly strong Zedrod, which is secured at the top of the printer. This is because it's got a motor which significantly increases build plate movement speed when compared to other brands' printers. And those of you who've watched my other videos will know I love it when a USB port is on the front. Well, this has two. Why, you ask? Well, the second port is for connecting up to the Creality webcam and automatically creating time lapses, though this is genuinely the one time I wish the USB port was on the back because the trailing cable from this to the webcam just gets in the way. And the printer even has built-in Wi-Fi or an Ethernet port if that's your flavour. It connects to the Creality cloud easily, so you have printing and monitoring functions available in the app. And all this for a price comparable to the much more entry-level Saturn II. So yeah, you can understand why I was so excited about this, right? But for anybody who's seen my recent shorts on the printer, knows that testing did not go well. I don't want to waste your time, so let me summarise the main issue with this printer. It's the UI. Sorry, more specifically it's the UX, so it's the user experience, not the interface. At times, trying to operate this thing is like how many sitcoms would use the trope of the Japanese high-tech toilet. Most of the functions you want are there, but accessing, understanding and using them is nigh on insanity. Here's just one example. Leveling the bed. One of the most common functions on any printer, and as such, typically deserves a prominent place in the menu structure. But here, it's under Settings, Print Settings, Z-Axis Movement. And yeah, that's just the start. That's not even the big deal. Now, be careful, because in here you have two options. One option is back to zero, the other option is leveling. So during my unboxing, I chose leveling, expecting the typical screen which allows me to incrementally adjust the bed height, at least initially, so I can get the foam out of the way. But instead, leveling is a fully automated process that you really need to loosen the screws for before you begin. And because this printer's got such a powerful motor, before I even realised what was happening, when I pressed leveling, the bed shot up to the top and came slamming back down into the protective foam, requiring a reboot before I could do anything else. What I should have selected here was back to zero, which on this printer, unlike every other printer and common sense would dictate, is the top. I mean, it's fine if you've watched this video or made these mistakes yourself, you know this now and you know what to do. But I'm sure you'll agree that this is anything but intuitive, and not having the ability to incrementally adjust the bed is an abysmal failure in the design of this printer. I later needed the bed just slightly out of the way so I could reseat the fume extractor unit, but I had no way to do this other than to choose leveling, watch the bed go all the way up to the top, and hope I could press stop before it hit the screen. And the reason I needed to reset that unit is because the bottom had popped out of the frame in transit. It's not the worst damage I've ever had with a printer through transit. And the obvious reason it popped out is that there's no securing tab at the bottom. This unit was just compressed into a flat frame and secured by one bolt at the top. With just a slight knock or with enough vibration over time, I'm quite confident this is going to pop out again and rub against the side of the print bed, which is how I noticed it in the first place when it had resin running down it and dripping onto the fan and then into the hole underneath. But once I'd set it up, leveling was super easy. I just loosened the screws, pressed the leveling button and tightened the screws. The manual suggested I use the included paper for leveling, but I didn't get any paper with it, so I just leveled it with the vat in and used the FEP as my leveling paper. This saves so much time and I do it on every printer. But when filming this, disaster struck. And at first, I blamed myself. I thought I'd done something wrong, and I spent the rest of the evening trying to figure out what and how I could have possibly broken this part by setting it up incorrectly. You see, the way this spout works is when you loosen the vat and unscrew it, you don't lift it out, you slide it out, and when you do this, the spout springs up and out of the way. Now, when you put the vat back in, you slide it back in and you have to push it against a tab below the spout, which then pivots the spout back into the vat. Now, this vat. Right, there are some guide bars at the back which roughly align it to the correct place. Roughly. It's not as exact as other printers' guide tabs, so you need to hold it firmly in place with one hand so that the spout mechanism doesn't spring it back out, then blindly wobble it with the screw in with your other hand so that you can blindly find the thread that you can't see because it's covered by the sides of the vat. Awkward! And I had to do all this when just filming the initial components of the printer. But as I later came to film the leveling bed functions, I had to do it twice, by the way. The first time is filming the button press and then the second time is filming the action. It was the second time that I filmed it that the bed and its rapid speed snagged on the spout, cared very little for any resistance of anything in the way, and tore straight through it, snapping it off and also mangling the end. Now, if you're a seasoned 3D printer, you must have come across the time when you've accidentally left a little chunk of resin in the vat and then you've sent the bed down to the bottom and you hear that grindy crunch noise as it gets there. This printer terrifies me because at its rapid speeds, the way it's going to come down into the bed is just drive that resin straight through the screen, which at least has a tempered glass screen protector on it, so there's something. Now, I haven't tested how brutal this is, and for obvious reasons I'm not gonna test it, but yeah, it scares me that this would just drive resin straight through the screen without any care in the world. But as for the spout, it turns out I wasn't the only one this happened to. I was watching the Print House who did a live unboxing and also had the absolute shock of his life when this happened.
Oh, shoot. I don't know. Go back to zero. Oh, Woo!
So suffice to say, there's going to be no testing of that feature in this video. Apparently it's automated, but others have claimed it isn't. I'm not sure, I can't test it for obvious reasons. Right, we're a good way in now and we've not even really got it working, so I'm going to jump ahead to actually printing stuff. Creality sent me some of their standard resin, and I'm sorry Creality, but if you want me to test a sub 35 micron printer and what it can do, don't send me standard resin. It's a 29 micron printer. So I decided to take resin from another brand, and one that would actually showcase the detail on this printer and what it's capable of. And the first print I tried was without even putting the USB drive in, as it was connected to the Creality cloud. I just pressed the button on screen and downloaded the single available model direct to the printer, but once it downloaded, it caused the printer to lock up and require a restart. On reboot, it was there on the menu again, but selecting it caused the printer to once again hang. So I selected the Titanic model, which came on the USB drive and was pre-sliced. But this thing is even more confusing. This printer's actually got a great feature. It copies files to the machine before it prints them. But once again, the way it goes about doing this is incredibly unintuitive. So, when you insert the USB drive, all the files stored on it will appear. But when you select one of these, you'll see a loading screen as it copies to the machine, and then followed by what feels like an eternally long and idle verifying message. Then, you go back to the front menu. What? Okay, let's try that again. It repeats the steps. Okay, I'll try a different file. Same process, back to the first screen. What is happening? It turns out, and you may not have noticed, but the first file on the screen is continually being replaced by the one you've selected on the USB drive. This would be fine if the printer showed you preview images like pretty much every other printer, but no, you've just got this wickedly fast scrolling text that is somehow both too fast and too slow to read. I actually thought we'd done away with scrolling text marquees when everyone realised they were rubbish back on the internet in the late 90s. But again, this is more of a quirk. The solution is simple. Now, you know how the print operation works and where to look for the file to print. And it's easy to tell what's what if you just give everything short file names. Or, and I might be talking crazy, but perhaps Creality could, or arguably should, highlight the first file as the one in memory and ready to print, and use preview images, and never, ever use scrolling text. Oh, they've done it on a ton of the functional buttons too, including the next screen you encounter when you go to print, which is asking you if you want to use the print settings in the slice file or the settings on the printer. Now, I didn't understand the value of this at first, but thankfully one of the followers or commenters on one of my earlier videos prompted me as to why this is useful. So you see, other than layer height, you can pretty much adjust all of the settings on the printer itself, or even adjust them mid-print if you wanted to. Now, I get why this is helpful on FDM printers where you can see failures happening and need to adjust on the fly, but on resin, if you see a print has signs of failure, you just cancel, reslice and start again. But where this is actually useful is if you realise a print just needs to up or lower the exposure a bit, you can cancel your print, adjust the settings on the printer and print again. There's no need to go and fully reslice the model. So it is handy. Now, my first attempted actual print, which was included with the printer, was the one called Titanic. I have no idea what this model looks like because I can't open the pre-slice file in either of the provided slicers, and they didn't include the STL of the actual model. But after just a couple of initial layers, I heard a loud pop from the printer which must have been the model tearing away from the build plate, and that would have been because the printer is moving so fast. And I had no further luck with the other model, which was Cardioth. That didn't work either. And I do accept that these issues probably came from the resin I was using, which wasn't the one that was meant to be used with this printer. So I did what I always do. I went back to my exposure test and started by slicing them in Halot box. And it certainly offers a simple workflow, but basic functions like auto supports provides undefined supports that you're unable to refine. It's either full auto or do it all yourself. So I moved over to Chitubox, and this is another great addition to the printer because they actually give you Chitubox Pro, which would cost you $170 for a year on its own. So there's no denying this printer and its features are incredibly high value. But in Chitubox, despite having a lower pull, the stage 1 height was limited to 8mm. Any attempt to go lower and it would reset to 8. So unlike other printers where I could benefit from a slow then fast pull, I was locked to slow for the entire lift. There's no point me adding another 5 or so millimeters onto the 8 maximum it already has. As for the lift speed, this was also locked to 60mm a second. And when I watched the first print happening, it looked insanely fast, as though it was ignoring this setting entirely. I even complained about it online in a short. I've watched all my other printers at this speed and they're all much slower, until I realised that my other printers are lifting at 60mm a minute, not 60mm a second. Now in the printer you can actually select as slow as 1mm per second, but this didn't change anything, it was still going at the same speed. So at its slowest speed, and comparatively, this printer is still lifting at 3600mm a minute. That's 60 times faster than what I use with this resin on other printers. But does it actually print? Well, yes. However, more than a few times the printer locked up mid-print and required a reboot, and then the model clearing off the build plate before going in again. I had assumed that this was due to leaving the USB drive in, as it didn't seem to happen whenever it was removed. However, I've gone to the printer this morning, having left it idle for only a couple of hours, and once again it's hung. So it's random. It could be my hardware, it could be an inherent software problem. I simply don't know and won't until there's a firmware update. But when you have to cancel a print and the print bed is still in the vat with the resin on top of it, this is fun. Once again, you've got 2 leveling options, and the printer seems to go at 1 speed when these are moving, insanely fast. So if you've got resin on top of the build plate inside the vat, when you press go to 0, which again is the top not the bottom, it then explodes out the vat at rocket speed and sends wet resin flying everywhere. Now, when it came to my actually successful prints, in order to compensate for the fast lift speeds, I had no choice but to overexpose my prints, which, yes, means some level of detail loss. Anything less than this and the print would just remain adhered to the FEP rather than the build plate on the earlier layers of resin. So print quality wise, it's good for the speed. But let me be clear, because that doesn't mean it's good. It's fairly good, but only relative to the speed it moves at. If you're wanting the best detail from your models, not only does this printer not do it, but because the bed moves so fast and the only slower option on this motor is off, it can't do it. And to add a couple of final nails into it, there's a couple of the extra smarter features of the unit. Because I've got Creality's camera, I was able to easily set this up for a time lapse, well, set it up anyway. And I'm sure I'd read somewhere you can use any webcam, but my Logitech model was not detected at all. On the printer, you can choose to enable time-lapse mode and even have a few smart settings in order to get this configured, such as when you take a photo, is it every 1 layer, 2 or 5, etc. And you can also use this webcam to remotely monitor your prints in the Cloud app or on the website. But once my print was completed, I was then told I could download it from the Creality Cloud. Yet there's nowhere in the Creality Cloud, neither the app nor the website, that I could actually find where to download this from. And you can't actually see any of your historical print jobs that were actually initiated from the printer. You can only see prints that were initiated from the app or the website. So there's no indication that this feature actually works unless you're slicing it in the phone app or you're picking a pre-sliced model from the website. And speaking of that app, which is just a mobile version of the website, it's an absolute mess. More unintuitive and poorly organised menus with community posts of unfiltered, inappropriate adult content. It's bad. And you don't need to take my word for it, you can go and download it yourself for free just to get a flavour of what my complaint is here and about this whole experience. Just the 5-second unskippable ad every time you open it, or even just app switch, should tell you enough about this to know what to expect from it. Now, as I said in my short, I actually sent a 23-point email of issues to Creality about a week ago before I started this recording, and that outlined what I've mentioned here and a few other things that I've self-resolved with a better understanding of what this printer is and what it's trying to do. And here I am almost a week later, and other than my direct contact, There's been no reply, not even about the damaged spout, which they have the video of. Now, I did accidentally send that email to the support team at Creality3dofficial.com, which apparently is not the official Creality website, oops, but my contact was CC'd on the mail and told me a week ago that it had been forwarded to the tech team. And at the same time I sent this email, I actually had a message from one of Creality's other customers who'd seen I'd got the printer early, and they were asking me if I had any special contacts at Creality because their email for a damaged in transit different printer hadn't been responded to for much longer than you would expect. Not even acknowledged, no receipt of an email. Don't get me wrong, I don't expect any special treatment because I'm a reviewer or influencer or anything in any way, but even as a customer, if I haven't had a response within a week or even an acknowledgement, that's not good enough. And if people are accidentally reaching out to Creality3dofficial.com instead, as I did, then perhaps Creality should do something about that, considering they're a direct partner. Now don't get me wrong, this might be a great printer for those people looking to rapidly create prototype samples, and if that's you, I suspect you'll get even better results if you use Creality's own fast resin. This isn't something I received, although other creators have said they've got some on the way, and it does advertise it on the website, though right now, at the point of pre-order whilst I'm recording this, you can't seem to actually buy it either. So until I can get my hands on that, or a Creality suggested alternative, I can't actually test the max speed of this printer, including the 17mm per minute printing speed. And that's printing speed, not the movement speed I mentioned earlier. 17mm per minute is incredibly fast. And without so much woe is me, I kinda suspect this is going to be my last sponsored Creality review. I genuinely can't see them wanting to work with me again after this. But I suppose time will tell, and that's going to be telling in itself. If Creality really are a good and reasonable company, they'll act professionally and take this feedback on board to improve it for next time, because much of this is just dumb software issues they could easily fix. But right now that does mean a myriad of bug fixes and an entire UI overhaul. And I just can't see them doing that considering the lifespan of printers nowadays. But you need to understand that this printer was made to be fast, and that's a double-edged sword. It's too fast for the highest quality prints that this screen resolution is capable of, despite the claims of keeping the same quality on Creality's website, unless of course Creality's fast resin turns out to be magic. And I am sad because Creality are a big name in 3D printing, but this release feels like the sort of printer we would get 3 to 5 years ago, with a bunch of unrefined features thrown in and marketed towards everyone rather than the target audience, which seems to be rapid prototypers only. If Creality want to be taken seriously, they are in sore need of a head UX designer, both for their resin printers and for the Creality cloud, because anyone who has used any other printer before would likely find this experience incredibly cumbersome and frustrating, much more than we're used to nowadays. And just to give them the benefit of the doubt, I have promised Creality a second review of this product if they can send me some of their fast resin. So watch out for my updated thoughts and opinions on this model, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss it. Has this review saved you making a mistake? Has it helped you finally identify a printer that's fast enough for your needs? If so, let me know down in the comments. Do you think I'm completely wrong? Because I'm happy to take the feedback, but please make your points clear so I don't misunderstand them. And it has unfortunately gotten to the point now where I simply can't reply to all the comments, but I need you to know I do read every single one, so keep them coming. Your feedback is what I get the most benefit from with these videos. So until next time, thanks for watching, especially to our patrons who help us make content like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Fohammer out.